Welcome everybody. In this tutorial, we're going to be making a game where we avoid objects. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to go to New, and we're going to go and make a HD landscape project. Okay, and we can zoom out, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to View, and we're going to go to the window size, copy that, and then paste it in here, so that way we only have this one window here. Let's go ahead and let's create a background. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a sprite, and you can see here we have a sprite, and we're going to make it kind of a grayish color here, and we'll just simply move that here. And what we can do is we can move this all the way to the back and kind of around the items there. Okay, and now that we have that, just like that here, that should work out quite well. If you want to, you could probably make it a little bit lighter gray, just so that you can kind of see the background if you want. All right, let's hop to our layer here. Let's go and change this to a background, and we'll lock it. Add a new layer, and then now we'll be able to add in our items here. So the way that we're going to make this game here is we're going to have an object, and this object is going to move and avoid other objects, okay? And it's going to be fairly simple, and we're going to go ahead and let's add in our player first. All right, so we'll add in our sprite, and we're eventually going to change this to a circle, but let's go ahead and let's do that here. Okay, so we'll go ahead, and this here is a little bit big, and of course we actually got put in on the background layer. So I'm going to cut that, and then paste it here. So just make sure that this layer here is selected here. This is a little big, so we got 250 by 250. Let's change that to, let's say 125 by 125. Okay, there we go, and perfect. I think that's probably good enough here. So if we have this here, it's fairly simple. And we need to go and we need to avoid other items here. Now, we could make it green, but I'm actually going to make this a monochrome game. So what that means is that it's only going to be black and white. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that just sounds extremely boring here. Okay, and you might be right. However, monochrome games do a throwback to old games here. Now, another thing what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the red, green, and blue to 248, 248, and then 248. This is an off-white, so it's slightly gray, and it will make it look a little bit better. And eventually we're going to change this background to be an off-black as well. So now that we have this here, we can kind of move this around. Now we need to go and we need to create other shapes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to do one of these, and you're going to see why I'm going to do that in a second here. So what I have planned for this is that the player is going to be a circle and everything else is going to be a square. But what we're going to also do is we're going to make these 50 by 50, and yeah, it's probably about right. If we can probably make them a little smaller. Let's try 35 by 35. Okay, and these are just going to kind of come down like snow. So these are just going to come down, and you're going to move this around all over the screen here. Okay, and this may be extremely simple, but it will show you how to make a really fun game with really simple items here. Okay, so now that we have part of the game set up, let's take a look here, and let's just change some of these sprite here. So we got player, and we could actually call it snowflake if we really wanted to, but we could I think snowflake might work, but if you wanted to say avoid, we can just call it that. And just because we like naming things, we can name this background just like that, and then lock it back up there. Okay, so this has a pretty good start, and I always like to make sure that I put off the video tutorials and compartmentalize them. All right, so this concludes the tutorial. What we need to do now is we need to make this player kind of follow around the mouse here. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to add in the mouse, and we're also going to add in the touch here. Why are we doing this? Well, you have to make it available for both here. So making this thing follow around the mouse is actually really simple. So let's go ahead and let's do that here. Okay, first of all, we're going to go to say system every tick, and I always use the keyboard to make this every tick. And system every tick is going to be we're going to make the player. We're going to go set, and then we can actually have set position, and we're going to say mouse.x and mouse.y. What's the difference between x and absolute x? Well, whenever you see the word absolute in programming, it means that it's going to return a positive value. So let's say you have a game and for whatever reason you're using negative values, then you can always use the absolute x. That's what that does there. So we go to mouse x and mouse y. So let's go ahead and let's run this layout here. And you can see that it all works out quite well. Pretty simple stuff here. Okay, so what we can also do is we have a whole bunch of awesome options here. We can do set cursor style here, and you can actually set your cursor style to none. Okay, so let's just change it to crosshairs here because you can see that there's crosshairs. So if you're making a game that needs crosshairs, you're more than welcome to do that. In fact, the plus here kind of looks neat here. If we had something that resembled a circle, then that also might be cool as well. But we're going to go ahead and select none. Why is this important? Well, look at this. It doesn't look like your mouse cursor now is this little sprite here. So if you want, you can go ahead and do that. Now there's a couple problems here. One, I can bring it off the screen and up and kind of down here, and so that's a bit of a problem. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. Let's hop into the player here. Let's go into the behaviors, and the behaviors here we're going to say bound to layout. Now what this bound to layout does is it bounds it to the layout, and you'll notice that the cursor comes outside of the game here, because if you look at this black area, this specifically black area, that is technically outside the game. So you can see that here, and that actually works out quite well. All right, so let's go ahead and now that we have that there, the one thing that you also need to do is you also need to set every tick. So I'm going to copy and paste that here, and it's going to be touch.x and then touch.y, and this will ensure that you'll be able to use it on a mobile device. Okay, so you can see here we have touch, and there's a bit of a problem here. This now all of a sudden doesn't work, and there's a good reason for that. Okay, let's hop back to our layout here, and one thing that you need to know is you have all these options here. But the one option that we're actually looking for is in system, and we're going to say if every tick system, and if you type in is on mobile device. Okay, and I'm going to copy and paste that here. Now, you're also wondering, wait just a second here. Is mobile device? This shouldn't be on a mobile device. Well, that's you have to go invert, and that will say if it's not on a mobile device. Let's go ahead and run the layout here, and you can see that it works as expected here. When you're building for multiple platforms, you do have to do a bit of work into actually making it work for multiple platforms. Now, what's interesting about this is that the touch will both work on a PC and a mobile device, or a desktop and a mobile device. So you want to make sure that you have these kind of options. This concludes the tutorial. Alright, so if we run this here, you can see that, yeah, it actually looks pretty good. We have this game here, and what it will do is it will simply avoid everything there. So next thing we need to do is you need to spawn these items here. Alright, and we're going to do avoid, and we need to spawn them at a timer. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll say system every X seconds, and we'll make it 1 second for now, and we'll say system create object, and this object of course is going to be avoid. Okay, And we can say this is going to be the x. We can make it random. And let's just say random. And in order to make this random, we need a range here. Let's say 50 by, since since it's going to be the width, and the width is 1920, and I know that because that's what HD width is. So let's just do something like 1870. Okay, so there'll be a random range in between those two. Okay, now we also want to spawn this off screen. So if we take a look at the Y value here, it's negative 109. 100 should do perfectly. So we'll do negative 100. Okay, now if we do this, well, that's great, but we need to go and we need to kind of move it down. Now, there's two ways of moving items down here. So the first thing is to set a bullet here. So let's go and let's set a bullet. Okay, and the bullet takes a little bit of trial and error, and you can see that the bullet moves left and left to right. But we won't want to move it left to right here. We have to set the angle to no. And then we have to say avoid on created. And we need to hop into avoid and say, and set the angle here. So how do we set the angle? And I actually don't even bother searching for it. I just kind of set what I just search for it in the box here. Now the angle, I believe, is 90. You can always check this here. So if we take a look at this here, the angle is 0, and if we kind of move it down here, yes, it is indeed 90. Okay, and of course, the only reason I did it on this one because I could actually find the handle. The handle in this one's a little bit harder to find. But yes, we definitely want it to be 90. And so we set the angle to 90, so on created, and you can see that it does indeed move down. And get this, we have this avoid here. Very cool stuff. So you can see that we're avoiding it, and we almost kind of have a game here. Okay, it's almost working, but obviously there's no checks to see if we win or lose. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at how we can go and just make this a little bit better here. First of all, the speed is a bit too fast. I was looking for something maybe a little slower. Let's try actually 250. Let's take a look at that here, and you can see that, yeah, that's probably a little bit better. Hop back into Construct 2. Whenever I have the every x seconds, I always like to make a global variable. And the reason is that if you need to use that variable more than once, changing it manually, especially when you're trying to get your game out the door, becomes really time consuming. Taking a couple extra seconds to set up a variable at the beginning is much better. So what we'll do is we'll say name, we'll call this avoid spawn time. And you notice how I called it avoid spawn time and not something like Banana Shark Republic. That makes no sense. So we'll go ahead and we'll actually say 0.7. Okay, and we'll go in here and we'll say avoid spawn time, and there's this fantastic little globe there to tell you that it's actually a global variable. So here we go, and you can see that they get randomly selected here. Now we can go ahead and we can increase this as the game progresses here. Let's go ahead and let's make it actually we'll make it 1 here. And you're going to see the reasoning behind this. We're going to actually give a little bit of a tutorial. So you see that everything looks good, phenomenal, and then you can see that you're gonna avoid it here. Okay, and of course, if you want to, you can see what it looks like if you do 0.2. We'll go ahead and run that as well, and you can see that there's a lot more, and we can make that harder. Okay, whoa, that's actually quite a bit more tricky. But you can see how this game is almost ready here. Okay, let's set it back to 1, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Welcome back. Let's take a look at how we can go and reset the game here. Well, let's first of all add in a function. Now, if you've taken any other tutorials at Mammoth Interactive, you'll notice that I talk about functions a lot, and the reason why functions are important is they are an integral part of computer programming. So it's if you've also taken math, you'll notice that functions are also important. But in Construct 2, you have to go and add the function. Then we can go ahead and create a function here. So this function here is going to be on function, and we'll call this, we can call it player def function here. Okay, and what we're going to do is in this function we're going to have a certain amount of functionality or a certain amount of logic that will always get called when when the player dies. And the reason why I do this is that in bigger games and bigger projects, there's going to be more logic. So this way is a lot easier. So what we need to do is we need to say if player is on collision with a void, okay? And I'm going to put this function all the way down here. And sometimes it's actually kind of hard to move. So really it should go up. Anyway, it looks like it's a bit too hard. So we'll say function, call function, and we'll say player death. Now, this is a new feature in Construct 2, which is amazing, which you can go and find out which function here. For now, let's go to System, and we're just going to still go to Restart Layout. This is just the basic part here, so if we click on that here, you can see that it does indeed get restarted. Okay. Now, let's take a look at this here. This needs to kind of move away. So we'll just kind of move it up there. And you can see you have a couple of items here. And there you go. And if I start it, it just simply resets. Okay. Now, this is good for testing, but it's not good for actual play. So let's add in another variable here. We'll call this is alive. Okay, and we'll set this to 1 because is alive is a Boolean variable. Booleans are either true or false. Now, it's technically an integer variable, but there's no global Boolean function, at least not yet in Construct 2. So we're going to say is alive is equal to 1, meaning that it is indeed alive. So on player def, we're going to set this variable to is alive, and we'll make it equal to 0. So that way we have a hard-coded version of what we need to say here in order to say that the player is dead. So it's telling the computer that the player is indeed dead. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to say, go back up to our every tick here, and we're going to say compare variable, and we're going to say is alive is equal to 1. So we're only going to move these variables here if the player is alive. Okay. Now, you can't really, and actually, it's not here that we need to do. It's it's not here, but where it is the bullet here. So, in order to do this here, we need to say if is alive is equal to 1 or is equal to 0, then we're going to stop the bullet. We're going to go void and then set angle of motion. We're going to say set speed to 0. So if the player dies, then technically it will get set to 0, right? And you can see here that there are no more items. Where I'm getting at with this is that I'm going to simply put in a wait feature. Okay, and I'm just going to say wait maybe like 3 seconds, and then we'll restart the layout. So here's what I'm saying. So we got all of this here, and there we go. Everything is good. And then all of a sudden I make a mistake, and there we go. Everything gets set here, but we actually set is alive after or the wait, so we have to set that before. So we're going to wait, and then there we go, and then we have that here. Now what would actually be good is if we put is alive is equal to 1 here, and it will also stop the player. So let's go ahead and let's run that here. Everything is good, and then bam, see, I can't move anymore, and then it will reset the layout. But one thing that we did not do is we did not reset the actual the bullet speed here. So in order to do that, it's very simple. We're going to go to System, and we're going to go to on Start of Layout, and we're going to set the bullet speed to 250. Okay, so we have to hard code that in. So we're going to wait. Now, this whole tutorial here in this last 5 minutes is showing you how to kind of take the action of the player messing up, the wait, and then the reset. Now, after this, of course, the reset here is going to whenever you reset it, you have to also reset the isAlive variable back to 1, or else it's not going to work. Okay, so one last thing here, and you'll notice that if you play games, you'll see that they actually do this quite a bit. So we wait, 2, 3, and then there we go again. The game is started over again. Now, usually what happens is that you wait, and then there's kind of like, a score or whatever. Okay, so this concludes the tutorial. Welcome back. Now let's add in a score. So how we'll do that is we'll add in text here, and the text needs to be on this layer here, so we'll just kind of drag it over here, and we'll just call this txt score. Okay, make it much bigger than this. The color, and we can make it white, or if we really wanted to, we could actually make it the custom here, which remember was 248 by 248 by 248. Most people aren't going to notice that, but at the same time, it is cool to kind of see. So let's make this as big as we can, maybe like 144. Yeah, 144, and you can see that text is not there, but what we're going to do is we're just going to add in a 0, and we just have to make sure that we do see that 0 perfect. Now, we have the horizontal alignment and the vertical alignment, and then the hotspot as well. What this is that this is the where it is on in the actual box here. So I always like to make it actually left, even though it's kind of weird that it kind of moves like that. But we'll make it left, and top is obviously where it is on the top of the bottom. The hotspot is this item here, so you can actually change it to center if you want. The way it's already set up is perfectly fine here. So we got this 0. I think 144. I think that's probably pretty good. Yeah, in fact, it's even a little bit too big. Let's hop back into here, and let's just make it a simple 100, and that's probably what we want to do here. We'll just move it up there, and yeah, that's perfect. That's definitely perfect. So let's hop back into Construct 2, and what we'll do is we'll say, we first of all have to add two things. You have to add in a score. So we'll add in a global variable, call it score. Okay, obviously that's the score. The next thing we need to do is we need to add in every X seconds, every 1 second. And for every 1 second alive, you're just going to be, you're going to get a point. A lot of new mobile games do this where it's very simple points. It's not 100 or 200, whatever. If you're going for an older style game, you can do the 100, 200,000 points. But in this case, we're just going to add 1 here. So we're going to go to System, Add To, and we're going to go to Score. We're going to add to 1 here. And then usually we could print there's two things we could do. We could print the txt score and do set text, and this will print the item here. We can just simply just say score, and it will print the score here. Now we can print it every second, or we could print it every tick. In most cases, you're going to have to use the every tick to print the score, because you're going to need to update it quickly. In this case, though, it's one of the rare cases where you can actually update it every second. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Just keep that in mind. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, it looks like we're getting points way too quickly here. Okay, and that actually makes sense because a second really isn't that long of time. So what we're going to say is every 3 seconds. So every 3 seconds you get a point. 2, 3, 1. There we go. 2, 3, etc. Now, setting up the score here actually looks pretty good, but we have to add in. So let's just take a look at it. We got 1, and then if we die here, you see that the score keeps going up, and resetting the layout, you can see that score never got resetted. So player death, we also need to reset. Now we could reset global variables, but what we're going to do instead is we're just going to simply set value to the score to 0. Okay, that's all we're going to do. Wait 3 seconds, restart layout, set score to 0. That's all we're really going to do. Now, setting the score is important, but one quick other thing is I'm just going to move this over a little bit like that. So let's just take a look. There we go. Yeah. Now, the only other thing that we could do is we could move it over here. It's up to you whether you want to do that or not. This includes the tutorial. How do we add difficulty to the game? Well, it's actually quite simple. So we have the score here. Let's go and let's add in another item here. So let's say if score is equal to 2, or maybe even equal to 1 here. What we'll do is we will go and we'll say system subtract from, and we'll go avoid spawn time, and we'll do 0.1. Okay, and what this will do is that when score is equal to 1, it will subtract 1, and we can actually make this even bigger here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's just do that here. So we got this case will be 2, this case will be 3, this case will be 4, this case will be 5, this case will be 6, this case will be 7, this case will be indeed 8, this of course has to be 8, and this will be 9, and then this will be 10, and since we already have one up here, it will be 11. So if you are counting and good at math, you're going to realize that this is a problem here. But there's another problem, and let me run the layout here. So we got 1, and as soon as it changes to 1 here, watch what happens. Whoa, that's impossible to do here. What went wrong? Well, what happens is that when score is equal to 1, it's constantly going to subtract from 1. So we have to add in something called a system, and then we can go to trigger once while true. And that's only going to trigger this once here. Now again, the second part here is that if we keep on subtracting 0.1, it's going to get to a negative number here. So let's just play it for a bit here, and you'll see what I'm saying here. So here we go. We have this all quite well. 2, 3. It gets progressively harder. I'm still easily kind of going through this. 4, 5, and then 6. It's getting harder. 7. 8, 9, and then now it's getting really hard actually, and then it gets to be impossible at 10. So what do we have? And then we never reset the variable, so that's also kind of funny. Let's take a look at this here. So first of all, at 10 we can't subtract 1 anymore. We can subtract 0. Let's say 2, and then we'll subtract again when we're at 11 here. But what we also have to do is when we reset this here, we have to reset, so set value of avoid spawn time back to 1. So we'll go ahead and put that back up there. And that way, once we die, it will go back to 1. So this actually creates a very even curve of difficulty for you. Okay, so we got 2, 3, and you can see that the player here, now remember, for you and for me playing this game is relatively simple and relatively easy for me because, well, we set up the game. But for a person that hasn't actually played it, it's going to be fairly difficult for them to do it. So you can see here that by 9 and then 10, it gets to be really hard. And so really the game starts at 10 seconds, which is about 30 seconds of play. The question is do you want to have this variable increase or not? It's up to you. You can change the difficulty to as easy or as hard as you want it to be. I think for the purposes of this tutorial, the difficulty setting is actually pretty good. This concludes the tutorial. Now, if we take a look at the game here, for the most part, this works pretty well. However, there's a couple of things that we can do in order to kind of spice it up just a bit. Let's hop over to our avoid here and let's add in a sine. Okay, and what you need to know is that a sine wave, if you take a look at this graphic, it kind of moves one way and then the other way in kind of like a curvy format. And that's essentially what a sine is. So let's add that and add that to the sine layout. And you can see that they kind of move back and forth. Now this adds in a whole other randomness to the game here. Now, in addition to that, what we can do is we can actually play around with this here. So, if let's say we did the magnitude of 100, watch what it does there. Okay, you can see that it makes it much bigger. And if we play around with it, and let's say 5, you can see that it makes it much smaller. Let's put it back to 50, and then let's make the period 1. Okay, you can play around with this as well, and you can see that they look much different. So, where am I getting at with this? Well, let's take a look here. Let's go hop to the bottom. Let's go to System, on Start of Layout. In fact, actually, we already have an on Start of Layout. We're going to go ahead. We're going to go to Avoid here, and then you can see here that we have all of these sign options here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the magnitude to random. Okay, we're going to put it between 20 and 100. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to say the same thing here, avoid, and we'll do this period here between random 2 and 5. Okay, just like that there. And this all works, but the thing is if we run it, what's going to happen is that every single item is going to be of the same period there. So what we're going to do instead, and you can also see that they kind of move when you get hit too, right? So we need to go and disable that as well. So let's go ahead. Let's first of all cut that out and then go to avoid on created. Okay, so when we create this avoid, it will randomly set it. So that way, what will happen is that everyone will be a little bit different. Okay, and that actually adds in a much different effect. Also, it makes the game quite a bit harder because you can kind of predict the sign movement, but since they're randomized and since there's a space now, there's actually more dead zones. So that's also kind of cool here, and you can kind of see it totally adds in a new dynamic to the game. So I'm trying my very hardest here to avoid here, and you can see it does work. But pretty cool stuff. Let's take a look at this again, and let's what we have to do is on the player death here. We restart the layout, but we have to go to avoid, and we need to do set enabled to disabled. So we're going to put that there, and so we're just going to I'm just testing it here, and it didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. And actually that's a bullet. Disabled, we want the sign, so avoid, and then there isn't really a way to change it here. So what we have to do is we have to change the period and the magnitude to 0. So there's an easy way to do that. We'll just copy this here, and we'll paste it up just like that, and we'll set it to 0, and then we'll set it to 0 as well. Okay, let's run that again, and there we go. We stopped it, but then you can see that it works out too. Now, what's interesting about this is that when we have this on created here for the avoid, what happens here is that every time it's created, even though we've stopped it on player death, that makes it so that it will automatically restart. So here we go. It's kind of cool, and you can see how this works here, and you can see how the game gets progressively harder. Now it's up to you how hard you want to make it, But here is a great way of just adding just a little bit of extra spice to your game. This includes the tutorial. There's a couple of things that we can do to make this a little bit better. What we can do is we can actually rotate, for example, the player once they go and get destroyed here. So what we can do is you go to System, or actually it's going to be Player Death. It's going to be Player Rotate clockwise. Or it doesn't really matter which angle, counterclockwise, and we'll say it's 3 here. So when we go ahead and we do this here, so we can go, you can see here that it does rotate, but what we actually need to do is we can set this a little bit better here. So we can say, and I believe we haven't set this up yet. Yes, so I can say here, for example, if is alive is 0, then I can go ahead and say rotate 3 degrees. Okay, and so you can see there it just kind of starts spinning. Now that works, and it's not necessarily bad. It's just if you make it something like 20, it's exactly what we're kind of trying to do here. So we got, yep, something like that. That's a little bit too much here. So maybe we'll just go for 10. Okay, 10, and then we'll just go ahead and add this in here. Yeah, and if we really wanted to, so well, we'll make it 6 instead. If we really wanted to, let's go ahead, let's hop into the player here, and let's add in a behavior, and we'll do fade here. Okay, and if we run this right now, watch what happens. It just fades out automatically. That is definitely not what we want. So let's take a look at the fade here, and we'll go active at start, we'll go no. And if we go ahead and do that here, you can see that nothing changes here. So if you want to use the fade and you don't want it to fade right away, you just have to select that here. Next thing we need to do is we need to say is alive here is going to put the player, and then we have a fade. We'll just do start fade. Okay, and then you can see we just kind of fade out. That actually looks kind of cool, right? And you can see that when it restarts the layout, it automatically does that here. Now, if you are going for this restart the layout, this is an easy way of doing this here. Keep in mind, though, that if you're trying to make your own game and all of a sudden this fade out is not working, and for example, let's say you're fading, your object becomes completely transparent, you will have to reset the opacity and undo the fade here. But in this case, you don't actually have to do that. So you can see that that just simply works out here. Now, if we wanted to, if you really wanted to, we could actually fade out these stars as well. So in order to do that, we can go is alive here. And another thing we could do is we could just simply copy and paste this, right click, and replace the object here. Okay, and you can see here that in this case, there's no object that's the same, and sometimes this won't work. So let's go to this void here, and that's because we have to add in the fade. Where is that fade here? There it is. And of course, we don't want this active at start. Let's hop back into here, and then let's copy and paste this. And then you can see we want to just place it with a void here. So we got this, and then they both kind of fade out. Now, if you really wanted to, we could actually copy and paste this as well, and replace the object with a void here. So you can see here that you are replacing objects, okay? And so you can kind of spin that as well. Now, this actually works except for one major problem. And that major problem is that these aren't naturally spinning. So they both kind of spin. So in order to change that, let's actually go and let's say, and I don't believe we have that here. Actually, we do have the is alive as 0. That's what I was looking for before. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put that into the is alive 0. And I'm going to change this to 1. And what I'm going to do instead here is I'm going to go and we have is alive, and we're going to say avoid rotate, and actually we'll rotate this one clockwise and we'll rotate it 1. Rotation is the easiest way of animation, right? And you can see here that that little animation makes things a lot better here. Now there's two things. We can either increase it by 2 or double it or have it. So I think that actually looks pretty good. But if you kind of want more of a tranquility or add some kind of tranquility to this, I'd say 0.5. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. And then, they kind of just all spin out. And if you really want to get into this here, we can take a look and make this half as much. So you'll just see that. There we go. You can see that just looks a little bit better. Perfect. All right, and you can see just like little things will make just the difference. This includes the tutorial. The next thing we need to do is tidy this up a bit. The reason for this is that this doesn't look very good, and that, believe it or not, does actually impact your program, because if it's unreadable, then it's harder to release your project here. So you can see here that we have the avoid on created has come out more than once. So in order to do this here, it's best that you go and you delete, for example, these items here. And the next thing we have here is so this all works out well, except for this here. Let's go ahead and let's add in a group, and we'll call this score difficulty counter. Okay, and in order to kind of do this, you have to kind of copy and paste this so that you can get the lower boxes in here to work. So I'm just going to undo that there. And there you can see we have this nice little group here. Okay, let's add in another group. We'll call this mobile/desktop controls. And again, it may not seem like it's important, but it really is. All right, and I'm just going to move that in there. And again, you have to copy out this so that it works here. So there we go. And you can see that here. And if you want to, you can add in any other ones of these two groups if you wish. All right, on start of layout, on created is alive, and then every 3 seconds I can put that up here. So you can keep your system pretty much all the system items together. And that way, you know that at the top of your page, all the system items here, you have your functions, and then you have all your other items here. And I always like to put my groups at the top. That's just personal here. But organizing your projects is really important. I highly recommend doing it. This tutorial, as of now, is less than 3 minutes, and I'm trying to explain everything that I'm doing. So it only takes a minute, but you'll thank me later. This concludes the tutorial. Welcome back. All right, let's take a look at this project here. So essentially, we have a small little game which progressively gets harder, and it's very simple yet very effective. The only thing you can do is, if you wanted to, you could change this box to a circle, which is originally what I wanted to do. But this box actually works out quite well, and you can see that as this game gets harder, it gets actually quite a bit harder, quite a bit faster. And the other thing about this game, and you can see here that I have just enough room to maneuver there. Okay. The other thing that we were going to do is we're going to change this background to a much darker black here. So let's go ahead and let's do that now. Off black, something like that here. There we go. And I think that looks just a little bit better. Save it, run it, and there we go. Yeah, that I think looks a little bit better. The contrast is much more. It might be just a little bit too dark. And Yeah, just a little bit lighter. There we go. And I could talk about color schemes forever, pretty much. And the reason why that I do like this dark here, and that it's not a quite dark, because if you look at to the side here, it is gray, whereas the sides are completely black. So this here is a really simple game, yet it's really effective. Now, if you want, and what I suggest you do is you take this game and you make something a little bit different about it before you move on to the next portion of the course. The reason for this is very simple. What you want to do is you want to learn what great entrepreneurs do is they learn something and then they kind of they improve upon it. So your task is to go and improve. This includes the tutorial.